Voting. That's a beautiful blouse. Is that new?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Norm.
Must have been to Costco.
Yes, we were there yesterday. Got some great bargains.
We only ever buy clothes at Costco, Walmart, or Giant Tiger for rock t-shirts.
Ooh, I know.
So tell me, Dean, why didn't we retire abroad?
There are so many reasons, and we are going to talk about those today.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, we would just like to welcome all our new subscribers. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of new subscribers, and we want to thank you and to all our existing subscribers that have stuck with us through this journey of retirement that we're upon. And if you are new to the channel, I'm Norm, this is Tina, and we talk all things retirement, including travel, finance, and anything else you tell us to talk about. So anyway, we didn't retire abroad because one of our biggest fears is healthcare.
Yeah, and you know what? That is so important, Norm, especially as you are getting older, isn't it?
It is, and we are fortunate or unfortunate, depending on which way you look at it, that we have universal healthcare in Canada, and so our healthcare generally is met by that. We don't have to buy insurances. In fact, we can't buy insurances for healthcare in Canada. So we have peace of mind knowing that our doctor is available and our medical system hopefully will take care of us. The downside is we pay a lot of tax for that, but it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
In a foreign country, one of the fears is not being able to communicate effectively with the medical staff if you're in a particular healthcare emergency because you don't have the language.
Yeah, I think that is something that's really important, Norm, is that not being able to communicate, especially in a medical situation, if there's something wrong with you and you need to understand or try to understand how they're going to fix it or something, that is a big barrier, isn't it, when you don't have the language?
It is, and when we looked into retiring to Portugal, they obviously want you to have, in the first few years, your own private medical, and there are only 2 companies covering seniors over the age of 65, and it's another expense which you're going to have to incur. The other thing that we have is language. There aren't a lot of English-speaking countries that will let you retire there, so you have a language barrier.
And, you know, a big thing that goes along with that is the feeling of isolation, feeling that, you know, there isn't somebody to just go and chat at the coffee shop with or go out for a meal with, because there's always that extra barrier that is you can't communicate with the locals.
No, part of it is, you know, in your own country, you maybe go to the grocery store and you have a, you know, 5-minute chat with the cashier on the way out and a nice little interaction, or you might ask a question of somebody in a shop or stuff like that, where you don't have that when you can't speak the language. So you are just isolated from the everyday life of whatever country that is.
I think another thing too, Norm, is that often people don't realise is that if you are going to be moving to another country, you're going to have to get rid of all your possessions, particularly all the electrical stuff that's not going to work in a different country with different voltages and things. And when kind of you have to get rid of things in a hurry, you don't get a lot of money for them, do you know?
Unfortunately, your possessions are kind of worthless. And it's a lot of effort trying to sell them on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. People won't pay a lot for your stuff. And we've been through this when we emigrated from the UK to Canada. All our electrical stuff had to go because it wouldn't work over here. We did bring one thing and bought a transformer, and that just didn't work. So and if you're retiring to a foreign country, your furniture won't fit or the cost of shipping is too expensive. So if you're counting on the money that your possessions are going to bring so that you can rebuy the stuff in your new country, it doesn't work. You won't have enough money from those possessions. The other thing that Tina touched on with the language is also cultural isolation. We felt that when we came to Canada, because a lot of people would be in conversations and they would say, oh, do you remember watching such and such TV show in the 70s? And of course we watched British TV in the 70s, which wasn't the same as North American TV. So we didn't have that connection with people, even though we spoke the language. So there's this cultural isolation. We never celebrated Thanksgiving. We didn't know what people in Canada ate for Easter. It's these types of things.
It does take a little bit of getting used to, doesn't it? I mean, after we've been here 30 years now, obviously we're used to it all.
Yeah.
But when you first arrive, these are all new challenges that, at the time when we came, we were also a lot younger. We were in our late 30s, so it is different, isn't it?
Very much so.
When you move, when you're a lot younger.
The other thing is why people move a lot of the times that we see on YouTube videos is for the cost of living, that maybe people haven't saved as much for whatever reason, whether it's divorce or you just weren't inclined to do that. So a lot of people look to live on either the Social Security or the Canadian pension plan abroad, and they're looking for countries where that $1,000 to $2,000 a month will give them a comfortable life that they can't achieve in their home countries. But that means living in the third world.
It's you're giving away a lot of the things that you could be used to, that you're now going to feel that you're giving up on those, because all you're looking at is that you need to find somewhere cheaper to be able to spend the money, isn't it?
And oftentimes that comes with overwhelming poverty, which, coming from a first world country, it's distressing to see people living in abject poverty. It's also litter and garbage and stuff like that. We've been through some South American countries, and it's just terrible, the amount of garbage dumped by the roadside that you drive past. Plus, the other thing in Portugal was the dogs barking all the time.
And then, too, there are things like power outages, hey, Norm?
Very much so.
We're used to being able to get sort of things like air conditioning and being able to get on the internet and things like that, being able to cook all the time. When we want it, we can just do it. You don't get that in a lot of the cheaper countries, do you? So there are a lot of things that you would have to give up.
So
we feel.
A lot of South American countries, they do have power outages, and a lot of them are planned. So it's going to be a couple of hours in the afternoon and the power goes out. So if you're trying to do something specific that needs power, then you just can't do that. Then there's climate stress, which I don't think people think about that. And the only reason that we do is because we have been through it. Haven't we, Dean?
Oh, yes, we have, Norm. I remember the freezing cold, don't you?
Coming from the UK, our winters were pretty much like Vancouver on the west coast. So coming to Ontario, we weren't prepared for the extreme cold weathers. And in those days, we were living in Ottawa, and we were getting about 8 to 10 minus 30 Celsius days in a winter, plus all the other just regular warm minus 15 Celsius. And so it took us about 3 or 4 years, possibly a little longer, to fully acclimatize and to get used to that extreme weather. But the advantage was that we were only in our late 30s, so that we were physically fit and able to cope, and we weren't putting huge stresses on our body. But when you are older, 65 to 70, say, you can't cope with these stresses as much. So if you're retiring abroad, you may well be looking at high heat temperatures and high humidity.
And, that's another thing, Norm, that you hear in a lot of these countries where people say that it is literally so hot and humid outside that for like a couple of months they don't go out. They just stay inside in the air conditioning. And that's not good either, is it?
No. So we would be concerned about the amount of stress that is putting on your physical body.
Yeah.
And is that going to lead to medical situations where you're not coping well with the heat, humidity? And then there's also the difference of cuisine as well, and lots to get used to. But climate stress and old age doesn't necessarily go hand in hand.
I think something else too, Norm, that you have to consider is the amount of paperwork that you have to do. Like lots of it, isn't there?
Yeah, you've got to do the visas,
Yeah.
and then in the early years of retirement in a new country, you have to renew your visa. You've got to remember to do that. There's also the fact that you're going to have to pay taxes in some of these newer countries. But if you're coming from North America, Canada, and the United States, then they have world income tax. So whatever money you get, you have to pay to Canada or the United States and do a tax return, unless in Canada, you can fill out tax forms to say that you're leaving the country. But the downside to those tax forms is that they assess you for tax and exit tax. So you might well be on a small budget anyway of not a lot of net worth. And then the government's going to reach into your pocket and take a bit more.
Yeah, take a big chunk of it, hey?
Very much so. So don't get caught up in double taxation, where you pay tax in your host country based on your Social Security or CPP payments, and
then also tax in the new country where you are, which could be substantially higher than what you're used to paying.
Very much so. So the next point could be a pro or con, depending on how you look at it. Is the glass half full or half empty? You lose family and friends. Well, that could be an advantage in some situations, but generally we thought twice about living in a new country in retirement because we have family and friends, and they become part of your support network.
Yeah.
How many times have you been ill, or you've heard of a friend who is not feeling very well or has maybe a major medical situation happening? So you rally around, you make a casserole, you take food over.
Yeah.
You offer a ride.
Yeah, if somebody needs to be driven somewhere, family or friends will do that. And for us, that was really important. We didn't want to give up on the family and friends. And I know people will say there's things like Facebook and you can do things, Zoom and things. But it isn't quite the same as literally being there together, is it?
Nothing quite like somebody dropping by, or you just decide to go visit a friend or one of your children just for no reason. And that's a big loss that you can't quantify when you're thinking about retiring abroad. And the other last thing, which I think is one of the biggest ones of all, is you probably
don't fit in. It sounds strange, doesn't it, Norm?
It does. You maybe don't look like the people that you're living with because you may be Western and you've gone to maybe an Eastern country or a South American country. But the whole thing about fitting in is it can weigh on you. You know, when we first came, we're just saying when we first came to Canada, because we experienced some of this, that our children were teased about their accents initially, that they weren't fitting in because they didn't sound the same. So how do you imagine if you don't look the same? People think you're a rich Westerner, and to a certain degree that can target you as well in some of these countries.
Absolutely, that is something, hey, like security, isn't it?
Very much so. And that would be a concern for us, is not being singled out for criminal intent.
Yeah, maybe not feeling as safe as you do in your home country, eh?
That's right. So, we hope everybody is keeping well.
And staying safe.
And until the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.